Hello everyone, this is Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com. Today we have a hand from a $1,500 buy-in World Series of Poker event. Early in the day, we're playing 50-100. A tight, aggressive player makes it 275 from the low jack seat. This is actually a six-handed tournament, so under the gun, but under the gun six-handed is certainly not the same as under the gun nine-handed, because under the gun nine-handed has to be really tight, whereas under the gun six-handed can get away with playing a few more hands. Typically, you want to always address the seats. We have button, cutoff, hijack, low jack. Then we have under the gun, second and third. But this is a low jack seat for simplicity, and so we know exactly what we're talking about. Don't be someone who says, okay, we have under the gun plus one, under the gun plus two, under the gun plus three. That doesn't really say how many people are yet to act, which is actually the most important thing. So anyway, here we have it, pocket tens. What do? Do we call or 3-bet? I think either play is perfectly fine. I typically call, but there's nothing wrong with 3-betting, especially if you think your opponent's going to call a lot, pre-flop, and then just check fold a lot of boards. But I do call. I think our hand's going to flop great, and we're in position, so this is certainly a reasonable spot to see a flop. We get a pretty bad flop. It comes ace, king, queen. We're certainly done with it. So check, check, check. There's no point in bluffing this flop. No one's ever folding an ace or a king or a queen. But then we just get there on the turn, kind of. The turn is a 10, giving us a set. But there's 3 to a flush out and 4 to a straight out. So what are our opponents going to do if they have a jack on the turn? Are they going to bet or are they going to check? Well, I think most people in the spot are typically going to check with those hands. But at the same time, they could also check with the hands like ace-king or king-queen with the intention of calling a small bet. If they had a flush, they would probably just go ahead and bet and hope someone has a jack that can pay off. So I'm not going to say we have to bet this turn. It certainly is thin to bet this turn. If you get the vibe that your opponents are somewhat calling stationy and playing really face up, like if you think your opponents would always bet with a jack on the turn or mostly bet with a jack on the turn, then this is a perfectly reasonable spot to go ahead and put in a small bet for value / protection, because here I really don't want a random club to come off on the river or, a jack to come off on the river. So I do bet 275. Notice it is quite a small bet, and I like this. We're just going to be able to protect our hand pretty nicely and get some money in ahead. River's a king. We make a boat. That's nice. And now our opponent leads for pot. Man, oh man, what a debacle. So in this spot, you always want to ask yourself, am I good about a third of the time? And typically, when you have a full house, at least a good full house, where you have, 2 of the cards in your hand like we do here, your full house is almost always going to be good at least a third of the time. So normally calling would be a pretty obvious play. Here, though, what did we think our opponent was going to do with hands like ace-king on the turn or king-queen on the turn? Well, I thought he would check call a small bet. What did I think he would do with a jack on the turn? Probably just lead, but if he does check call, is he ever leading this river with a jack? I mean, that would be really optimistic, right? So what is our opponent betting with? He's either betting with a flush, but flushes have to be somewhat scared on this turn, right? Or he's leading with a bluff. So what bluffs are there? Well, clearly there are no obvious bluffs, right? I mean, I don't think people are taking pocket eights with the 8 of clubs and leading here. I think that would be pretty ridiculous. So is this guy ever bluffing with hands like ace-queen or ace-10 because they have blockers to me having a full house? And in a $1,500 World Series of Poker event, I think the answer is just no. So this is a fold. Man, I would hate to fold this. I don't know what I did in this hand, but I think this is probably a fold. I did not fold, though. And sure enough, the opponent had pocket aces. So really interesting play by the opponent checking the flop. This is a great spot to continuation bet the flop. I think a lot of people see top set and just automatically think, okay, I have to slow play. But that's absolutely not true if it's very easy for your opponents to also have something. Clearly here, this worked out about as poorly as possible for me because I would have just folded on the flop, but now he gets a little bit of value out of me. But notice, it took me turning a set or a straight to pay my opponent off. And even then, he's behind 4 times out of 6 because, right, the 4 jacks on the turn give me the straight and the best hand, whereas the 2 10s give me the fake best hand. And then we both had to get this pretty rough card on the river for me to actually pay my opponent off for a lot. So a pretty unlucky run out for me, but I do think the opponent definitely lost some equity, because more often than not, someone's going to have a king, or someone's going to have a queen, or someone's going to have a hand like, well, queen jack or king jack or ace jack or a flush draw on the flop, and they will put a decent amount of money in this pot. And when you have the effective nuts, you want to play a big pot. Notice here, we ended up losing the pot and maybe 2,000 chips, but that's 20 big blinds. We made a full house on a board containing a straight and a flush, and we lost 20 big blinds. That is fine. And in reality, I think we actually should have just folded on the river. So we should have lost 5 big blinds in a somewhat set up spot, given the way the opponent played the hand. And you certainly don't want to put yourself in that spot where you have a really good hand and like the most you can win is some tiny amount. So quite often the player with the aces here is like happy. He's like, yeah, I got him. But in reality, he kind of just got himself because he did not give himself the opportunity to actually win a big pot. On the river, if the opponent checked, I probably would have value bet to try to get called by, again, hands like a jack or maybe some hero call. But even then, that could be a little bit too loose. Maybe I'm supposed to just check back in the spot. This is a rough one. It's tough when your good hands are not actually good. That's going to be it for this video here on Poker News. If you enjoy these videos, definitely let the people at Poker News know on Twitter, at Poker News, and you can tell me as well, at Jonathan Little. And if you want more videos by me, check out all of the videos I have on YouTube. There we have my weekly Poker Hand podcast. We have my live video blogs where I share the highs and the lows of the poker tournament circuit. And you can just find that on YouTube by searching Jonathan Little, and I'm sure it'll come right up. So thanks again for watching. I'll talk to you next time.